Hello, everyone. My name is Armando Perez-Carreno, and welcome to the Web Talk Show. Today with us is Ian Palmer-Cook. He's SVP of AI at Qloo. Welcome, Ian. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Armando. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm very excited about this show because we're talking about AI and many other things specifically, but there's a lot to unpack in what you're an expert in. So let's get to it. And just tell us a little bit for a brief background for people who are listening. What do you do right now at Qloo? What is Qloo? And then also, what's your background? How did you get there?
Absolutely. So Qloo, Qloo, is a startup and is a company that's based in New York. I am the SVP of AI. The whole company does what I think of as predictive customer and cultural intelligence. So figuring out what preferences people are going to have over a wide graph of particular objects. So starting from a brand of shoes and going to hotels and then going to music artists and then perhaps restaurants. So understanding what that cultural information is underneath all of those and putting together a picture of how people's tastes shape what they're interested in interacting with. So, what they like from their music tastes all the way out to places they might want to go vacation. So we offer personalization and recommendation tools for business companies that are selling these things through apps, through big promotions, through social media. I happen to be the SVP of AI, which means I help deal with all of the AI initiatives and working through all of the underlying models and dealing with what we think of as new AI, as well as a term good old-fashioned AI, which is more of my background. My background's the kind of machine learning, data science, statistics work that I started 15, 16 years ago when I was doing a PhD and working in a policy organization. But since then, I've moved through a number of startups. I've seen things from like the electricity market predictions to healthcare, consumer packaged goods. Along the way, I started building teams and building products and getting those teams to build products. I would say I've generally been guided by the idea that everything I want to build should show up in someone's hands so that they can use it. I love seeing the reaction and the interaction and how people put these tools to use. And I've been fortunate enough to be now at Qloo helping to do that across a huge number of really fascinating companies.
That's amazing. Did you ever, when you were starting off doing statistical work and doing machine learning and sort of traditional AI, envision that we would be where we are now with Gen AI and the like, this close in time period?
No, I got a glimpse of it, and a few companies back when I was working, I was doing a lot of natural language programming, natural language understanding, natural language processing. It's kind of the stuff I built my PhD on. And when we first got embeddings and the idea of putting all of this text in a usable space, and there's just this example from way back, the king minus man plus woman equals queen was this thing that you could just say at the terminal and you would get back that answer. You'd get back queen, and it just blew my mind. I was like, this is crazy. This is an unbelievable step. That's when I first got the sense that something really different was going on. But of course, I didn't then go on to build OpenAI. So clearly I only had a small image of what was coming. I never thought it would get this good this fast. And it's been really fascinating to see. But one of the best parts about what I do is having a great insight into what goes into all of it and understanding not only does this feel really special and really different, but knowing all of the work and the hard stuff that went behind it just doesn't take away from the magic. It actually just adds to it, that all these people came together and doing all of this work, and it comes out in this thing that I just chat with and can do so many things is just a mind-boggling experience, and even more so now that I know everything that had to go into it.
Yes, knowing what goes into it is a very good point. People very quickly now take it for granted. Like, I can chat with it now. Why isn't it doing what it asks? Right? It's building a whole application in 3 minutes, but then you're like, no, I want it faster. Right?
Exactly. We have this ratcheting thing that goes on in our brains as we find it startling at first, and then it just becomes natural. And then it's like, well, why isn't this better? Why can't I like do this faster? It can do these things. Why can't it just do this thing I want it to do? And um, it's fun to sort of watch that and to see people kind of accept this and just be like, all right, it's out there. And it did this one thing really, really well. Now I just want it to like do all these other things really well. So the gap is always, I think it's always part of technology, right? The internet showed up and I was like, well, can I buy everything through the internet right now? And it's like, well, you can't, not yet. And then suddenly, eventually it got to the point where it's, the idea that we can't buy something that we want online is almost mind blowing.
Yes. And I remember back, what was it? 2007, 2008, I used to build, I did computer science, and I used to build like MPI clusters of computers for the intelligent systems program. But even then, you would see it and see like, when's this gonna be really used mainstream? It was such a far-fetched thing. It was just people on the leading edge, right? It just didn't feel like something that necessarily would. But then you see it was there, and of course in your industry you knew about it, you were still working with it, but then it grew slowly, steadily, but then suddenly it just like the past 3-4 years took a.
There's been a definite inflection point. So did those clusters you were building get turned into popular, or was there a lot of use pretty soon after you built them?
No, this was back in 2008. So
okay.
Yeah, they're I mean, obviously the department kept using them and growing them and things like that, but it was very niche even within the industry to be doing that. And nowadays, that's why when you said like knowing what it came from, I feel humbles you in a way. That's the sort of why I like doing these shows, because you start to get a behind the scenes look of everything. And if you tell people everything that goes behind even just that statement of saying man king plus woman equals queen is the what has to happen for that to work. There's so much behind it.
Yeah, just the sheer amount of data that goes into it, the clever work in statistics, the use of, essentially matrix algebra to just do all of these huge things, and just the sheer amount of it that has to go into these things now. I get a lot of people asking like, oh, should I still be learning to program? My answer is always yes. Not because programming is going to look the same or even function the same inside of a couple of months. The stuff I see at companies now is just bonkers. Companies saying we don't have humans touch code anymore. But understanding what goes into that and why it functions the way it does still seems to me a tremendous leg up on using these tools that people who haven't studied that won't ever quite grasp. Even though we've got calculators, nobody says you shouldn't study math to go into computers, right? Like I'm not going to go through and for my daily job hand calculate gradients and matrices and all of these things. But knowing what they are and just exactly what they're doing really ramps up my understanding of what I can get out, understand the progress, what I can use them for. Not that people who don't know those things should stay away from it, but as an advice thing, I constantly say, yes, you should absolutely learn to program still.
I tend to agree. I think it gives you a leg up, like you're saying, because you get two people in a room and they both have an idea for an app, and then one just knows what they want it to do, and the other one knows what they want it to do, but also understands a little bit about software, a little bit, to get you in trouble, right?
Yep.
And they both go in and start prompting the thing. The outcome of the one that knows a little bit is maybe 80% of the time going to be a lot better, polished, right? It might do the same thing, but it will cover some aspects of, like, I don't know, hover effects or accessibility or authentication, or little things that you figure out later on. And maybe the other person will still figure it out, but it might be, depending, of course, models evolve and everything, but you see it where it'll look more polished, it'll feel more polished just because they know what to tell it, even in a one-shot approach. It's like if you start by telling it which libraries, which things, which approach to use, which, I don't know, paradigm, it will do a better job. Because at the end of the day, it's like you're just telling someone the thing, but you're telling someone what it should do. And if you get an intern and just tell them to do something but haven't explained anything about the company or how you work, they're not going to do the best job.
Right. I see this a lot. There's a movement, or I've seen a couple of documents now talking about this thing that people want to talk about, like outcome engineering. And it's really, really interesting. And the advice is, well, just tell the tools what you want as an outcome. And I think what's happening is people still think this is like, well, I want a great website. Like that's the outcome. I was like,
Mhm.
that's not quite enough. Like I want people to be able to sign up, log in, uh, see a dashboard for whatever service they're using, be able to upload, I don't know, text or something, and be able to describe that as the outcomes. What, anybody who's been in
Mm.
software development can often identify as user stories, and you're going to get much, much better outcomes much, much faster. Doesn't mean we're not going to get there if the person doesn't have that kind of background, but you waste a lot of time, frankly, waste a lot of tokens, and these things are not cheap to
Yeah.
try to like move around and circle what you're trying to get, but in a really inefficient way. But if you, like you said, if you can say, all right, here are the like things to base this on and the outcomes that I want in terms of security and accessibility for the website and, for the user stories to be able to do it, you're going to get much further, much faster. So I I think of this a lot as just the ability to break down a problem in
Mhm.
the language of the problem. So one of the things, I valued in getting a PhD was there's some technical learning there, and I love the subject matter, but the idea of taking sort of a problem that has very loose definition and saying, how do I go about getting to some kind of solution? Like being able to answer a question, even if it's a small piece of that question, break it down into its parts. What are my research steps? What are the things that I have to do to verify that it's working? What do I have to
Mm.
do to say, like, this is, bulletproof in terms of other people can come and try other things and say about what did I try and why did I try it. So just breaking down that problem into manageable steps and then moving forward on those steps is, one of the best skills I got from that process. And one of the things I just push on all of the teams I've managed and all the people I've worked with.
Problem solving. Yeah, that's it. That's what I keep saying, because you get these comments, right? You post a
Yeah.
video and then people are like, no, what? The software engineer, so I got it. I'm like, no, the engineer is still needed because you still need the person who knows how to break a problem into smaller parts or even explain a problem. It could be a very non-technical person,
Hmm.
right? At the end of the day, but they're very good at explaining a problem and an outcome. And in that case, they'll do really well with these tools. And I think even the tools can help you, right? You can now say, okay, I want this, but please, before you do anything, interview me and
Yes.
ask me what questions you have or what, and then the tool will prompt you and then you'll answer a bunch of questions about it and we'll get a much better result. What do you think about that approach?
I think it's fantastic. I am privileged enough to be part of an organization that I help manage here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that is all about people who are putting AI to use at work.
Mm.
Not necessarily coders, though we have a bunch of those, but people who are just using these tools to actively build. And there's a great guy, and he talks constantly about how he's developed this interview skill for his AI agent. So when he opens up something like Claude Code, and he wants to build something, he launches this interview skill. And it's like, what is it you're trying to build? Why are you trying to do it this way? What are the steps you want to get to? And going through all of these steps to interview you, to pull that out, that becomes the core of the thing you can then feed back and say, now go build this. That, for oversimplifying what he's doing, like that becomes your new prompt. It's like it's becoming the process of going, what's the right way to ask the system to go build something I need? And that's what the interview process is. And I think you're absolutely right. Have you incorporated that in your own workflow?
Yes, I have. I didn't create a skill for it. That's a great idea. Because I'll tell it to do it, especially and people forget this. Like we get it so much into the weeds. You're building something, you get excited, and you just sort of want to plow through it. Claude starts to do it on its own.
Yes.
If you're on the platform 4.6, it'll sometimes it'll stop and use its interview tool and start asking you questions, clarifying questions, which I think is great. But in other environments, I find myself sort of telling it to interview me, and I find it's really useful because we forget, if you're constantly building tools, you might forget one or two things. And then you're at the 80% of the process and you're like, oh, I forgot we needed to think about, like, it, but you didn't. And so adding it later, of course, it's a lot easier now with the LLMs helping you, but still reworking something that's core is a little trickier.
Yeah.
So if you do it from the beginning, much easier. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun doing the the
Yeah, I
back and
find it
forth
ask
interview thing.
great questions, and it's just like, oh, I didn't think about that. Um, and then starting to be able to answer those. And then for the next time I go through it, I will help prompt is like, all right, here are the things I didn't think about last time that we need to do. And I'll help keep that in, memory. I'll save that out to decisions that, I made for the project so that the LLM can go back and like read it and go like, oh, here's why we went with this is the front end framework. Here's why we used this database. Here's why,
Hmm.
here's the deployment system we used. And, so I don't even, not even that, it helped me make the decision up front, but that I kept that information and I go back to it and go, that's right. That is what I was, why I was trying to do something.
Yes. And what have you found with this group of people? Are they mostly excited about using AI at their work? Are some of them still sort of cautious, scared? What is that? Or
We have a group, and I'll just shout them out. They're called AI at Work in Pittsburgh, PGH.
oh,
AI at
cool
Work
name.
is AI at Work, PGH.com is the link. It's just a fantastic process. I think we've sort of gone through the selection effect, meaning that the
Hmm.
people who show up are actively interested. They are eager to learn about it. The vast majority of them are actually using it at work. We have
Hmm.
very few people who are just sort of skeptics that want to sit down and hear things. So when we have meetings and discussions, you hear people bring like, here's how I'm using it. Here's something I'm doing for marketing. Here's something I'm doing for legal operations. Here's something I'm doing for just, product management internal to the company. And these are folks that are really leaning into putting it to use wherever they can. That said, one of our big discussions right now is, in fact, how do we work with people who are much more skeptical, who don't see it as the big benefit that we do, and they have real concerns and they have great points that they bring up. So this is not like how do you deal with the flat Earth people?
Hmm.
It's not that there's an objective truth there that the world is in fact round. And then how do you have this great discussion going back and forth with people about where to use it, when to use it, understanding guidelines? So it's just been a fantastic organization. And I think the benefit, and I would recommend this to anybody, is just getting a group of people together to hear what are you facing? What are your challenges? How are you answering some of these questions? Like, are you able to? And what kind of tools are you using? We make it a purpose to try to be both to answer the interests of people who are slightly more technical and people who are slightly less. I don't like using that term. We're all kind of technical if we're in this stuff, but the folks who approach the world starting with code versus the people who approach the world starting with a tool to try to answer a problem. So we will go through how some folks have coded something up that answers a problem, or somebody's like, hey, I'm using this like voice to text tool to help interact with agents or whatever it is, so that both kind of factions get a good sense of how to help incorporate this.
How did the group come about? I'm very interested because I think every city should have something like this. It's just a great way for people to start bouncing ideas because it's just the beginning.
Yeah. I can't claim the origination of it. I can't claim work as a founder. We had two people, and one guy's name is Rex, and the other name is Kit. They are fantastic people that have been around in Pittsburgh that are just great at this sort of, I believe some of the terms are often like super connectors. They're just fantastic people
Yes.
in the ecosystem. And they, I think, realized the same thing you did and started off about the same time everybody else started looking for the same thing, which was there has to be a community of people who are trying this out, who are not just simply idly going like, oh, I, type into Chat GPT, all right, I have a funny condition in my knee. Can you tell me what that might be? Or, can you help me find places to vacation in Cancun? And there's nothing wrong with those. It's just people who are looking to move beyond that. They decided they wanted to see that and looking around the community, didn't see anything specifically targeted at that. We happen to be lucky enough in Pittsburgh to have Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh, which
Yeah.
is my alma mater.
Cool.
And these are fantastic schools, but there's, tons coming out and there's lots of students and lots of activity around the kind of student pipeline to startups But we wanted to focus much more on like, all right, we're professionals. We are trying to put this to work at the place that we're at. Some of us are founders. Some of us are part of smaller startups. Some of us are at bigger companies. So Kit and Rex put this together and, put the call out for people to join. I was lucky enough to hear about it through some connections and got to know the folks. And now I'm, actively participating in building the community, which has been really great. We have an active Slack community. We have amazing in-person events that we've had to grow the scope for because so many people want to be part of it.
That's amazing. And it's like a homebrew computer club. What was that like back in the day
Yeah.
that people would yeah, I mean they would build hobby computers, and that's how Steve Jobs and
Yeah,
like
you're right. That's
the
Wozniak and Jobs met
Wozniak.
each other and building the computers in their garages. And it's fascinating. We have a whole channel in Slack that's just sort of like show and tell. What did you build with these things? And you get to see what people are trying out. Some of them are crazy, and some of them are just ingenious things. You're like, oh, I'm gonna have to go do that.
That's amazing. And Carnegie Mellon, didn't you? I remember when back in the day when I was building these, I was sort of in the supercomputing space, and I remember that Carnegie Mellon had, or I don't know if still they do, they had a big supercomputer with they were using Macs, right? Like X servers or something like that back in the day.
Yeah, there was an effort way back when to do kind of this, I believe, a mesh sort of network of all of
Hmm.
these Macintosh computers. The University of Pittsburgh has something called the Supercomputing Center, where they're trying to do high performance computing research and work. So there's some joint work going on there. And now, CMU is a place that some of the big chip makers go to say, like, hey, do you guys want access to some of our highest end systems? Because, like, right now, so many of the people that come out of CMU are leading researchers in system design, AI, machine learning, everything. So we're lucky to have that here, which is great. And it means those companies are coming to Pittsburgh to help be part of the environment.
That's so great. I think we're at a place where the media is making it mainstream so that
Mhm.
people understand that things exist. Like you hear someone's dad or mom be like, "Oh yeah, oh I made a picture, like I made a video using AI, stuff like that," and you're like, "Oh, okay, great." So it's coming down, and into like regular everyday
Yeah.
territory, right? Not outside the code environment or outside the hobby environment or outside the professional environment, which I think is great. And then at the same time, things like OpenClaw come out, and you're like, oh wow, like this makes it way easier for people to start interacting with the powerful versions of these tools with
It
access to
does.
file system and all that. And so with it bringing a lot of potential issues, of course, but at the same time, like if you follow the instructions and you do it carefully, the the power that they give you, the fact that you can be on your phone at night, like think of an idea and be like, oh, this might be worth looking into. Talk to the thing, have it build you an app overnight while you sleep, and wake up to see like, meh, maybe it makes sense to proceed with it, or I just toss it away.
It is a little bit addictive, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I am fully on the OpenClaw
Mm-hmm.
train. I started it when it had the name that it had to get rid of, Claude
Mm-hmm.
Bot, and then it had the Moltbot
Moltbot.
name, and
Yeah.
now it's OpenClaw, and now Peter Steinbridge,
Steinberg.
Stein. I've forgotten. I just know I see him as Peter on Twitter and the Discord channel.
Mm-hmm.
I use this every day. I use OpenClaw every day. I'm back and forth with the agents, chatting with them for interacting with my email, calendar, scheduling things, figuring out, what my day is going to look like, what I need to focus on, the tasks I need to do for work, understanding the status of projects. And it has been tremendous. But you're right. It almost gets addictive. There was a whole study that came out that I saw it on Harvard Business Review, but I think the study was actually conducted by someone else about people who are using AI tools at work. And the whole idea was supposed to be that, oh, this is going to free us up and we're going to feel less.
Yes.
But what people are doing is feeling more pressure, because when they're not using it, they're like, oh, I'm not utilizing the time efficiently. This agent is idle and it should be
I have
grinding
tokens.
away. Yeah, I have tokens I'm not using. I have work I could be doing. So I almost feel like, when I do think about it at night, and I'm like, well, I have this incredible power like right in my hands, and I'm not using it tonight for anything. I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to be behind. So that pressure is a real sensation.
I know the feeling. And I think it doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen to first movers in a sense, where you're like, I don't want to get left behind because I know everyone else in my space is moving so fast, but the rest of the world are like completely unaware that anything is happening. However, I'll give you my point of view. I'm glad you brought it up.
Please.
I feel I love software development, always have, because of the problem solving aspect that you talked about earlier. I love the alchemy of it. The fact that I can have an idea and just code it into existence. That's what I've always loved about software engineering. Not that like I love writing for parentheses I equals like I don't love that. Right. I love the fact that I can generate something. And so having a tool that I can talk to and it does all that in whatever language I tell it to, amazing. That's great. So I think what's happening psychologically, and this is completely my opinion, I feel that when you're building software, you have that alchemy part. And if you like it, great. It's at the beginning, you're excited about the prospect of the project. Like any project, I guess. I'm in this industry, so I don't know. But I get excited about a project. You go into it. You start building. You work with a client, or you're doing it for yourself. You go in, and you have this sort of wave of joy as you're building, because you're literally building out of thin air. And then you go through the project, and it progresses. And then after a few months, it sort of starts decaying. Like you have the honeymoon period, right? And then it's like with many things. And so I feel what's happening is this is so fast that you just stay in the honeymoon period. It's like you're excited about the project and you're able to finish it. And we'll talk about, I know, like getting into production, but you're like actually able to finish something complete and launch it within that same, like earlier than when the dip was going to start. And I think that's what becomes addictive, because it's like, right? You start and then you finish, but you're still on the hype. You're like, I want to do more. Like you never had that dip of like, now I want to work on this other project. It's
right.
Like,
that's fascinating. I thought you were going to go a different way, and I'll come back to your point. I thought you were going to say that the honeymoon period now is so much shorter because you can think of a new project and move on to that, and you get like the hit from like, oh, there's a new thing I can try, and then you get kind of halfway through it, but you can get like your feet wet on so many projects so fast that you're just chasing that kind of initial, I have a great idea and it's going to be great. I do agree that there is that feeling that like, I can get through this pretty quickly and I can have something out there. And hopefully what people will be able to do is see folks use what they're creating and then start building on it and seeing the feedback and help keep going with it. They have to find, in that case, a problem where the problem is interesting to them, not just the building, because the building, and I'm totally guilty of this, is like, oh, could I actually get it to do that? And then I do. And then it's like, well, I guess that was, what I wanted to prove, but, I have another idea. And then I move on. So, we're all a little bit on the ADHD spectrum and moving through these things. But yes, I have recently been doing it. My particular little dopamine hit for building and releasing fast are agent skills. I think it's very fun to say like, all right, there's something that I wish I could just ask an agent to do right away and not have to wade through, some questions, or these things are built for general purpose queries. So I want to give it some expertise in a particular area. And here's a skill for you. So I have built and made a little skills marketplace especially for like Pittsburgh folks, because it focuses on things that you can do around Pittsburgh, but also other ones. It's it's kind of, there are a lot of skills marketplaces. So I just focused it on Pittsburgh, but now it knows some things about the city and some transit items and things that go on that I can just ask it really quickly. And it doesn't have to find a lot of context. It doesn't have to go out and search the web and be like, did you really mean this in Portland? Or did you mean this in, there's a Pittsburgh, California that every so often I'll ask about. And it'll be like, oh, in Pittsburgh, California today. It's like, no, 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 Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I give it a little expertise with these skills, but they're fun. They're like really quick little hits that I think of. So that's one of the ways I, can get that idea to build something and then release it very, very quickly.
That's fun. I think that's a great idea. And just, I do want to preface this for people who are listening. Skills are amazing. One has to have a little caution with skills, because some people have malicious intent, and so even like especially with Cloudbot and things that have higher privileges, there are, like you said, many marketplaces, and then some people were putting in the typical thing like a Reddit scraper or a Twitter scraper or something like that. That seemed like the tool you would use. It would become very popular, but it had a nefarious purpose. It did something else like expose API keys and things like that. And so people just should know this sort of stuff. As the tools get better, they're going to have better locks onto them and things like that. But for now, I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing. And I love building little skills too. I just think we have to tell people you have to be careful with some of these, because you could get in a little bit of trouble if you don't do it. If you don't trust the author, right? Like,
yes. When the MCP stuff came out, the Model Context Protocol, for people who might not know, the joke went around, especially in that group I was telling you about, that the S in MCP stands for security. That you just have to be careful with these things. We are not in a world where the security policies are locked down and they're clear. Authorization through MCP is getting much better and much clearer. Skills right now have none of that, so you have to be careful. Like, is this thing asking for remote code execution? Is it asking to bring in code from somewhere else that you don't know? Is it looking to increase, like you said, permissions on wherever it runs? There's a lot that goes through it. So that is a terrific point, is we always need to be careful with these things. One of the things that, a lot of people do those, I share those, but you can build skills. Claude Code has a little skill builder tool. You can build them entirely for yourself.
Yeah.
The reason I share them is just like, hey, maybe you didn't even think about this, and now you can just add it very quickly without having to go through the process of building it yourself. But skills you build yourself, you can you can trust and say like, all right, I built it, I'm using it, I'm not getting it from anyone else.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, you could read someone else's skill, right? Yeah. You could go in, you can have your agent read it, not install it, like just read it and explain what it's doing and things like that. Or you can read it yourself. It's actually text, right? It's text.
In skills, what the one of the big unlocks that skills does that I think makes people think it's a true competitor or maybe supersedes MCP is that it can run code. Like, you can give it code files, but it's often code that you create. So a lot of mine will have little Python snippets to like, all right, here's how you call an API endpoint. But I can look at that and say, it's calling an endpoint. It's not sending my API key anywhere. Those are all locked up in secrets. It's not got, any sort of permissions saying, run this in sudo or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, and also author, right? So if someone's listening and they're like, oh, I'm interested in what Ian's putting out. Well, if you go to Ian's site or GitHub or whatever where the skills live, then you can trust. If you trust Ian, then that they're going to be okay, right? It's just these marketplaces sometimes, if you don't know who made the marketplace, or if it's an open marketplace and it doesn't have any sort of filters, then one might be careful. Now, I noticed this, Ian, yesterday. I went to the OpenClaw skills repo or whatever the page, and I clicked one of them, and now it has these warnings. Like, one of them had like suspicious whatever. Like, now they're starting to add stuff like that. So I think that's going to be helpful for people to at least take a step back. And
my own site, I have a submission process, so you can't just like put it out there for everybody to see. So the submission process does a couple of things. One, it checks for the standard checks for malicious code and nice. Permissions escalation, but it's also for me to read through it just to make sure it's something I want to have part of my marketplace. And I don't know, there's I won't describe some of the more horrific ways people can use technology, but I'm just looking for, let's keep it friendly, let's keep it clean, and and fun. Like this should be, it's focused a bit around Pittsburgh. Let's keep it Pittsburgh friendly, So
Yes. And within this, like we're talking to an agent, right? It feels like you're talking to a person at the end of the day, via chat or whatever. However, it's not AGI. It's not even close to AGI. It's just a loop, and it's using very high end models. So what if someone asks you like, do you see AGI as the future, first of all, and secondly, do you think this sort of stuff is related to it, or is it more of a completely different route that just feels more natural?
I am admittedly an AGI skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're going to have it anytime soon. I'm not sure. One should never say never. I'm not sure we're going to have a real understanding of AGI. We don't have a great understanding of human intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We have various definitions. We have different things and say we can do various tasks. I came to say math late in my life, understanding it. I was always much better at written English things than math, and came to discover that I loved math. I am never going to be a math researcher. That's not, just this natural talent that I have. But some people who can do that, and Terence Tao, possibly the foremost mathematician in the world or over the past century, is fantastic at it, but there might be things I'm better than him at. And who's to say which one of us is more intelligent in math? Blown away. I am, I can't even begin to approach it. And other things, who knows? So we don't have a great definition for human intelligence, and AGI is just sort of recursive on that. So if you go to even the most recent papers, the definition of AGI is like, well, it performs a number of tasks comparable to the average human intelligence. Like, well, I'm not sure what that is. I think one of the reasons I'm skeptical, and I think the most cynical definition out there right now, is from OpenAI. Their definition is $100 billion in sales. They will have hit AGI, according to their definition, when they have $100 billion in sales. That's the time at which the Microsoft ownership and profit sharing is rescinded, and now everything goes back to OpenAI, and OpenAI can just declare that they've reached AGI. My guess is sometime, probably not this year, but probably next year, one of these labs is going to declare that they've reached AGI. And I think what's going to happen is tons of people, including anybody that's got a share in these companies that are going to try to go public, are going to say, yep, that's it. We've got AGI, and we're just going to move on. It's unfortunate, because I think what happens is that turns into a scare tactic that keeps people from wanting to engage with this thing. It's like, oh, well, we're going to have AGI in a year, and suddenly it's going to do everything, and nobody's going to need any jobs, and everything's going to be displaced. And so I don't think it does any favors except for people who are trying to build a valuation for their startup or to go public to talk about AGI as a thing. I think there'll be displacement. I think there's a lot of jobs that are going to change dramatically. Some of that's good. Some of it's going to be very rough in the short run. I really want us as a country, as a nation, as a society to grapple with what's about to come. But, declaring that we have AGI, or that we've just essentially created a new intelligence in this world, is a distracting sci-fi concept that we're never going to get to. And I'll tell you this, if AGI can be defined and it's coming, it's not going to be just LLMs. It's not going to be just because it's incredibly good and fast at typing the next token.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Quick thing. Can you explain in like complete layman's terms, how does an LLM work?
Certainly. At its root, it is a prediction machine that says, given what I have been told, what sounds like the most plausible next word to say. When I teach this to a group of folks, I do it this way. I say, complete this phrase, peanut butter and, what do you think most people say?
Jelly, of course.
Sure. Now I say, think about Halloween. Peanut butter and, Most people will say chocolate because they've got Reese's peanut butter
Reese's,
cups in their
yeah.
head. And then folks my age or older, if I say think of Elvis and I say peanut butter and, they'll put in the word banana because that was Elvis's favorite sandwich was peanut butters and banana. All those things I gave you is what's considered context. So within context, the next right word changes. So without any context, peanut butter and jelly, terrific. If I'm thinking Halloween candy, peanut butter and banana is the most likely next word. If I'm thinking, old singers who OD'd and, shaped the history of rock and roll, and I say peanut butter and, you're going to get banana. So the LLM is doing that. It's filling in that blank based on things it knows and things it has in the background. So it's got a whole list. It can say peanut butter and it has an incredibly long list of words that come up next. And some of them are more likely or less likely depending on what's come before. That is all it's doing over and over and over and over again. That is not to say that the context and the information that goes into it is not incredibly complicated. How it processes it, how you train the model to think about those things is incredibly complicated. It is fascinating work. These are terrific advances in science and technology. But under the hood, it's just saying, what is the next most likely token that it should come out that will make people think, all right, this is a plausible response.
Wow. That's a great explanation. And I think a lot of people are blown away when they hear that. Like, what? I thought it was like this intelligent being inside the machine.
Yes. This is why it can't do math. So people keep trying to throw math at it, and you'll see all these models that say it scored really well on the International Math Olympiad. Terrific. Those are logic problems, and it's using very sophisticated logic in very, very specific ways. But often it can't do simple arithmetic. You have to think about this. The more likely it can get something right is dependent on how many times it's seen it in all of that training data. Mm-hmm. Has it seen 1 + 1 = 2? Unbelievably huge number of times. Has it seen 10 times 10? Again, and it's going to probably get that right. But you pick some random set of numbers, even longer numbers, and you say, please add these together or divide them. The chance that it's seen that combination of numbers and can say what the next right number is much, much lower. A lot of companies are doing some very clever things to try to get around that and to see what it's doing. But you have to understand, it's not doing math inside. It is not running a program that says, all right, I have the unit 1 and I am doing the add function to the unit 1 and therefore it's 2. It's finding the context that is the most likely next thing has got to be 2 because I've seen it so many times before.
That's a great example. And it's like vector stores, right? People got very excited with vector stores. So those who don't know, and this will probably be a terrible explanation, but you have an LLM and you want it to search your knowledge base. So you have a vector store, and you can talk about semantic search, of course, in better terms. But what's funny is you can give it access to a document, and then you can tell it, hey, do we cover this in this insurance policy? And it might do a very good job, or it might not. But if you tell it, oh, what is the PSI for part number X2F5G? It will not find it, most likely, because it's never seen F2X5G in the wild before, and it has no context in natural language to what its approximation to it is. Right?
Yeah, this is why even today, after years of all this advancement, and we're seeing some get incredibly close, intelligent document processing is still such a hard problem. You're feeding it PDFs and you're saying, find all of these bits or break the document apart so I can understand. In medical documents is a huge one. So if I want to do medical charts or medical documents and you feed it in and say all right, how has this person's BMI changed over the 10 years of documents that we have? It's often going to miss some of them or misstate it or grab the wrong number just because the way that document is structured might not be something it's seen a whole lot of times. Medical record documents are just notoriously complex and they're different for everybody you go to. So getting a coherent way to pull that out is very, very hard. And, again, I live in a bit of a bubble, but I'm constantly seeing companies like LangChain or Llama Index or even Google say, hey, we've got a new one. This is the best on the market for parsing PDFs. Because it's not a solved problem. It's not you just go to something and go, this will do it all for me perfectly.
Yes, and I've seen it, like you said, there's some clever approaches where you do like hybrid search, and so you'll have like free text search into the database, and then you'll also have the regular vector search, and then you'll do some re-ranking on it, and
Yes,
find like, okay, so which one of these is most likely, again, likelihood of being the correct one, and then you could do context expansion, and there's a bunch of like really clever things that I've read and tried, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is good, but it's like you're saying, like math, same deal, it doesn't really know, so then these companies are adding tools to it, right? It's like it doesn't know how to do it, so then it switches into let me build a little Python script to do the addition and then get
exactly.
back to you, which is
Yeah.
okay. It's a
Yeah,
clever
which is
approach.
yeah, totally fine. That's the way I would, I've worked with companies to help build prototypes and things and said like, trying to pull things out of documents. And it will want to say like, well, you mentioned like insurance documents. Well, what's the sum of all the premiums they've paid? That's a line in the document a lot of times, but it will also try to pull things out and then add it up to see if we can do checks to see like, all right, the number it found in the table because of formatting of the table or whatnot, like it grabbed the wrong column, but they got the right columns for the itemized items. So use a little Python program to add those up and then compare what I pulled from the document to the summary. And if those are different, that's a great flag that, your system's not necessarily hallucinating, but it didn't grab the right things. So there are ways to do that, and just using those small tools are uh, a terrific way to prevent some of the errors we see that LLMs generate.
That is, yeah. There's so much to unpack within each of these topics.
Yeah.
Like that's why I say your group it's amazing that you have people talking about that. I think, like again, I think that's something that we all need to do because it's very interesting. And then seeing it come down to like the regular everyday business, like the electrician and the plumber can now use these tools to be more efficient in their practice, right?
I
It's
think so. Boy, if I had a services company that needed a lot of scheduling and like where do I need to be and when, and if if it's me and four other electricians working, like who is where, when, what can I do? This is the type of thing I would be adopting immediately to just say like, all right, I need something else to be thinking through this, to look at the emails that come in or the requests that come in on the website and to remind me. I was like, hey, Armando's out on the east side of town, you're on the west side of town, but somebody probably like has an immediate need for, say, plumbing, like on the east side. So, task Armando, even though he's probably going to be a little bit later than if you left yourself, he's
mm.
closer. Just thinking about efficiencies that when you're in the middle of whatever you're doing, you might not be thinking about.
Yes. And it sort of democratizes it, right? It's like
Mhm.
Walmart has been doing machine learning for a long time, and they have all these things like, oh, a storm is coming. We're going to need all this toilet paper and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
But now it's sort of bringing it to now everyone can use these sort of tools.
Yes. Fun fact. The number one thing that gets shipped to the companies when you have big storms like hurricanes coming in are strawberry Pop Tarts.
Really?
Yeah, the sales for strawberry Pop Tarts go through the roof. They, despite their name, you don't actually have to cook them. They last forever on the shelf.
Ah,
They, taste good. Yeah, a lot of people
I
are like, well, it's not the healthiest. Like, that's true. But if you are worried about your house being leveled and you need something to eat and down in the basement, strawberry Pop Tarts.
that's I think did I read I don't know if I read that example somewhere. Like in the data science for business book or
So,
something.
yeah, there's a,
That's
a, a great company called Seek at seekinsights.com that does this kind of analysis. Maybe it's changed. Maybe it's no
really.
longer exactly strawberry Pop Tarts, but they do this kind of analysis for storms,
Uh-huh.
and it is fascinating the kinds of things that they find.
And can you see, like, can people see that sort of data, or is it more like data sets
That
for
one, they're a little more
companies?
business to business, but
Uh-huh.
I suggest following it. They post tons of
Oh, like
interesting things
neat
on
facts.
LinkedIn and fun facts.
Oh, I'll follow them, and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
sounds a lot of like a lot of fun.
yeah. It's great.
Yeah, it has been a true pleasure talking. I know we're
Same to
running out
you,
of time
Armando. Thank
here.
you.
There's so many things we could get into, but I don't want to take up the whole day
No
for
worries.
you. But where can people reach you if they want to learn more about you, maybe the skills, what you're doing, your current project? Do you have any projects people should learn about?
Sure. Easiest thing, just go to my website. It's called
Hmm?
fiercehighways.ai. That's
Fierce
plural,
Highways.
fiercehighways.ai. I also am one of those people that posts a bunch on LinkedIn, though I try not to make it all broetry and toxic positivity. One of the big things I like to admit is failure, right? And it's the best teacher that we've got. So I like to admit when things go wrong. But yeah, you find me either of those places, and I'd love to hear from anybody that wants to reach out.
Amazing. I'll put those links in the show notes as well. Again,
Perfect.
thank you so much for coming over. And for anyone listening, we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks so much, Armando.